Sal Capaccio will join us here on the Western Hotline. Next stop, training camp. Minicamp wraps for the Buffalo Bills. And we'll talk about it with Sal. Things we learned, things we wonder about going to the next stage when the season effectively begins. Training camp, we really get going in full force. Late July. We've not seen camp dates yet officially from the Bills. That's probably soon. Sal, is that like a couple days after minicamp wraps they announce that? I mean, I feel like in the next couple days we should get that.
You're so funny, Jeremy. I'm the kind of person who I literally go back. I save all. Are you a saver of emails? I save emails, and I go back and I have like every Bills like media release email for like the last 10 years. And someone will say, "Hey, when did they announce this last year?" Oh, let me check when they announced it last year, and I'll go into my emails and I'll look. And generally, they do announce the training camp schedule either now, like today, or next week sometime. Like generally, it's right in this time period. So yes.
Well, also, not that this kind of goes in line with what you just said. Hard Knocks said that they're going to premiere on August 5th.
Oh, great.
So,
well,
you got to have if that's true, you got to have some material. So you would expect camp to be at least a few days before that.
Well, I will tell you guys, it's actually written into the CBA. According to the CBA, teams are required to report basically 47 days before their first game, 46 days their first practice. I believe that puts us at July 23rd as the Bills' first practice. So that is not officially or confirmed, but according to the CBA, that's where the math is.
Okay, gotcha. So that's a month and 10 days from the Bills' return. And the good news is, Sal, they don't have too many guys that have to get healthy in that time, but Brandon Beane yesterday spoke about it. Max Hairston missed practice, but everything sounds like it's going to be good to go by the time they get there in late July.
Yeah, healthy sigh of relief, I guess, because of health. And that really starts with Max Hairston. We didn't know what his situation was going into yesterday. As you guys know, he left practice early, I guess you'd say, because it was very, very late in practice. But the last, couple of minutes, he went to talk to trainers. They examined what appeared to be his knee area. It wasn't actually. It turned out to be what Brandon Beane said, a tweak of the hamstring. So on the other side there. But he said that he should be good to go for training camp. He'll be good to go for training camp. And when I asked him specifically about everybody else who did not practice this particular time period, he said, knock on wood. He knocked on his own head when he said that, by the way. He said, knock on wood. He said, he believes everybody should be ready to go once training camp arrives. And that includes Joey Bosa, who actually was doing some work off to the side with trainers, guys. Looked like kind of some football-y type of stuff, you know what I mean? Not against people, but that was happening. So that's good news, obviously.
All right.
You get the sense, Sal, that Bosa, you hope this isn't the case, but we might be having injury updates with you or conversations about him. Like even if he's not, on, the shelf. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're gonna have a lot of what does this mean about him in the injury report type of talks during the season.
I do, Joe. I think, too, he's the kind of player. Last year, we didn't see a ton of vet rest days like we do for the Bills normally. Mm-hmm. Like, if you guys go back a few years, we've had a lot of vet rest days over the years.
Like, Vaughn would have some, right?
Vaughn would have some, and then I think Daquan Jones had one almost each week last year, right? Stephon would have them. Micah, I think. Jordan, every once in a while, you'd get them. It wasn't as much. Matt Milano, you'll still get these guys, right? But I didn't remember as many last year. Now, some of that is because of the way the schedule is and how funky it is with the Bills playing on Thursdays and Mondays and Sundays. It's just, the way it works out, sometimes they're not doing as much anyway as a team, so those guys are practicing. But when they have those full practice days, a lot of times you'll get that Wednesday vet rest day or a Thursday vet rest day. My guess is this year that maybe we'll see Joey Bosa on that, vet rest day designation a couple times, or more than that, maybe a little bit more often this year than what we saw with guys last year.
Well, good follow. And yeah, I almost got the impression, speaking of that, like while we will be watching him, that yesterday the report from Brandon Beane was, they're waiting to see how well he can come back, but almost you don't want to say a guy is ahead of schedule, but the tone I got was maybe it's not as bad as they might have feared right away.
Right. I think that. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if you want to put it that way. I don't know what they feared, I guess, Jeremy.
Fair enough.
I don't know what they thought, right? Like, I don't know what they thought it was originally. I just think that, because of the timing of it, and not knowing when they went in that, to the training room, like we didn't see anything. Normally what happens when these guys have something happens, there's a little more practice left. So we could say, oh, he went back on the field, or he stayed on the field, or he went back in. We never saw him.
Yeah.
So I think from that standpoint, the collective was like, okay, like we didn't know what was going on. Now we know now.
So training camp is the next step of the ladder, of course, here to get to the regular season. It'll be St. John Fisher again, Hard Knocks, of course. And, the James Cook thing, Sal, we kind of wondered if that would be an issue going into Hard Knocks. That's been mostly put to bed. It'll be something to watch, of course. But it kind of strikes me as a camp that might be kind of tame. Like, what is the best story? Last year, Hard Knocks might have been good post-Diggs. This is the second year of that, and they're kind of used to that. So it feels like the continuity that they have, and just in general, things are kind of going to ramp up pretty quickly for them.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as soon as they get to camp, right? I mean, you have, right away you dive right in, and then you have a preseason game a couple of weeks from then. You have Hard Knocks following them around. You have that return of the blue and red they have every year. That's usually the second weekend of training camp. Things happen very quickly, no doubt about it. So right away we get in there. It's going to be the storyline of I think Hard Knocks itself is a storyline, right? That's what it is for us. Hard Knocks is a storyline, and we're all going to be watching that. When it comes to what storylines they'll be following, that's interesting. I think that we all have the same names that we could all put out there, but also camp battles, guys that, how they look, fighting for a spot. Max Hairston will certainly be a guy there against Tre'Davious White. That's going to be a battle we're going to follow. Off the field, there's going to be some personalities. I think DeMar Hamlin and the story of him and getting to this point is going to be something. That's for them, though. For us, we've gone through that. We've covered that over the last 2.5, 3 years, So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. Some of the storylines that are kind of going to create it. And guys, sometimes storylines just create themselves once you get to training camp. I mean, you get to training camp, you're like, oh, there's something we're going to start to follow now and see how this is turning out. You hope it's not an injury, right? But here, I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, we've been talking a lot about Cole Bishop. And, he's so important, I think, to this year, and they really want him to win the job. He missed a lot of training camp last year. And look, he's going to be ready for training camp, but he didn't practice this week. Like, that's a really big deal to me. Like, he's got to get on the field. Yeah. Cole Bishop needs to practice because that's a really important spot. That's a guy that I think they're counting on. And I'm not trying to single him out, but to me, that becomes a story that maybe it wasn't a story a week ago, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm thinking of, I don't know that I would predict that we'll get anything on this level. But I remember in a Hard Knocks years ago when Corey Coleman was on the Browns, and it was in Hard Knocks, him going into his coach's office and like, how come I'm not practicing more? Like, why don't you trade me if I'm not? Like, that's a conversation you would have never seen. But we're in a different life of Hard Knocks, so I wonder if you even did get something like that, Sal, if you would even see it this go around.
I agree. Now, look, the Bills are going to have a lot of say in what gets shown and what doesn't get shown. And, they're very protective anyway of a lot of things, as we know. So I think things like that you would think normally would the Bills want that out, it's probably not going to be out. If Hard Knocks, I would say this. If Hard Knocks came to the Bills right now and said, hey, we want to be on all in these team rooms and meetings, I think that's kind of a non-starter for the Bills. Like, there's some things that we can do that are fun. Like, we're not putting you in there. If Hard Knocks says, we want to show all this on the field, that on the field, okay, what? Let me see. What do you want to show? What do you want to not show? If they say, we want to show all these things off the field, these guys going out, what they're doing on their off day, I think the Bills would be like, absolutely, please, show the whole show like that if you want. Mm-hmm. That's what we'd love. We'd love to highlight the personalities and not the football.
Right. Sal, the other thing that Brandon Beane talked about yesterday was Dalton Kincaid and what he and Sean McDermott said about him after the season about, what did he say, that maybe there was a little overcritical on Kincaid? But even that, I didn't think he sounded very critical. They sounded critical of him at the end of the year. I just thought, it seemed like, we just want him to get bigger and stronger, but maybe he thought that they went too far.
Yeah, he said maybe he was a little, excuse me, as you said, overcritical. He said I wasn't trying to be, but what he was trying to get across, what he said was, hey, the people you're going against, you have to get big. You have to be well armed. You have to be well armed to make sure, because of the type of players you're going against and the type of season it is and how grueling it is. But he said he's been here. He's worked his tail off. He's one competitive dude. He said, I know you guys think he's quiet, but he's super competitive. So, yeah, I think that's kind of been a little bit of a theme here about Dalton Kincaid, which is, hey, they said what they said, but everything about him after it, all the messaging has been this guy is working really hard. And the big thing for Brandon, what he said yesterday was really the injuries were a lot more to do with I think what he was trying to convey, Joe, is, hey, I said what I said, and I think it got away from us saying how much the injuries impacted him. But the injuries were a really big deal for him last year, and maybe we should have said that a little bit more than the getting bigger and stronger, right? Does that make sense? Like, I think people focused on the bigger and stronger part more than they focused on the injuries being a big part of it. But the injuries were a big part of it for Dalton Kincaid. Now, all that said, this is always with the caveat of it is shorts and no pads and no hitting, and it's geared towards the offense. I always say this time of year, but it's still my job to report what happened. And yesterday, I called it Dalton Kincaid Day at minicamp. I thought he was great yesterday. Like, he made a couple fantastic catches, really put his body in a great position to make a couple grabs. But that's who he is. He catches the ball. We know that. I know, like, what happened at the end of the year last year in that Kansas City game, and people, I think, unfairly sometimes like to take cheap shots, about that. I get it. Like, that's what sports fans do. But the fact is, this kid has really good hands, and I know that the target percentage and the catch rate wasn't great last year. A lot of that was on the quarterback or on them not getting on the same page, I should say, whatever the reason. But he has really good hands. And yesterday was a day that really showcased that, especially in 7-on-7 red zone and goal line work.
If I remember right, didn't his injury also happen like on a pass play? Like when we talk about him get bigger and stronger.
Detroit, Allen overthrew him. Is that it?
Yeah, like I thought he was laying out.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
But listen, he already had been dealing with an injury. Okay. I think he had already been dealing with a knee injury, and then another knee injury occurred on that play, which was when Josh overthrew him. He was wide open, and he dove, and he hit his knee on the turf.
Right. Okay. Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline wrapping minicamp. Mandatory minicamp in the books, and next stop, training camp for the Buffalo Bills.
So there have been years, Sal, like I remember last year this was said about DeMar Hamlin and others, like guys that you would say had a good spring. If you can categorize them, you mentioned Kincaid there. Is there anybody else that jumps out that you would say,
yes,
like when we get to training camp and we have sit-downs that we'll be referencing, well, this guy had a good spring too?
Joe Andreesen is top of mind right here. I tweeted about him yesterday. I'm going to read what I wrote because I want to make it. I think this is exactly how I want to phrase it. Joe Andreesen has gone from a cool, fun story to a guy who can play in the league to what I believe to be a player who can really help the Bills this year as a primary, reliable backup middle linebacker and main special teamer. Really impressed with his spring OTAs and minicamp. I think Joe Andreesen, I want to make sure I said it like that because he's not starting over Terrell Bernard. He's not starting over Matt Milano. That's not even really his position. He's a middle linebacker. That's what he does. He calls the defense. But I'm here to tell you, I think right now he has cleared the bar of he is the number 2 middle linebacker over Balen Spector in my mind because Balen Spector has not been available this spring. I can say that. He hasn't really practiced. We know that. But also because I think that he just looks like he has become a legitimate NFL backup player on the Buffalo Bills. I'm most impressed with his coverage ability. There are a lot of 7-on-7 they do here, guys, and like it just seems like he's getting to a spot he needs to get to right away, and we know he can diagnose and tackle already. That's a guy that comes to mind right away.
Is coverage like just being stickier, basically in coverage, more fluid? I mean,
I would say, Jeremy, understanding where to get to and getting there very quickly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when he diagnoses very, very fast. That's the whole thing with Milano and Williams. We've talked about this with Dorian Williams and Matt Milano. Dorian Williams really plays fast, but sometimes he just takes him a little extra bit to see where he needs to be, right? Matt Milano diagnoses so quickly on plays. That's what makes up for any of that, what he might have with the physical speed to get somewhere. I'm not comparing Joe Andreesen to Matt Milano, but I say he's much more like that, which is Joe Andreesen is a really great athlete. Look at his scores and all that. I get that. But I mean, it just seems like he knows where to be very, very quickly. And then even when the ball is caught, I've noticed like he just jumps out to me that he's getting to the ball carrier very, very quickly.
Just looked back to see like his RAS score, Sal.
It was incredible.
Andreesen was a 9.35. Like 4.6, 440. It's in the 81st percentile. So like when you say coverage, I'm thinking, oh, isn't he? Because he's shorter, right? Like if you're going to survive in the league at his size, I mean, I think you almost have to be fluid and quick, sideline to sideline.
Yeah, he's not. Look, I'm not, like, again, sticky, Jeremy said, like, I'm not talking about man-to-man necessarily, right? I mean,
okay.
I'm just talking about diagnosing and getting somewhere in coverage. He picked off Josh Allen on a pick six the other day because the ball was, like, thrown on a crosser, and it looked to me like Joe was in a good spot, but he had to kind of stop in his tracks and reach back right away. Like, he saw, okay, bam, that ball's right there. I got to just move my body real quick. He kind of batted it to himself. He got it. He ran a pick six. So, I just, you asked me who stand out. Like, that's a guy to me that really stood out and had a nice camp. Then there's guys that I just don't know where they fit, because I think I might be beating the drum for Tyrell Shavers again. The problem is I don't know how Tyrell Shavers makes the team, because I don't see them moving on from Curtis Samuel and the money they gave him. And I'm not saying he had a bad camp or anything, but he appears to me to be a guy they really want. And I love what Elijah Moore's done, right? Like, where does Tyrell Shavers fit? But every time I look up, the guy's making a couple really nice grabs.
Yeah. Shavers, right? Like you would think, okay, he's got to be a special teams guy, but even then, like, we're talking about them carrying 6 receivers, and I think they generally don't do that at the start of the year, at least on the active roster. Would you put Elijah Moore in that bucket of having a good spring? Like, what would you say to
Yes.
There are some in the this is what the fantasy people will do at this time of year. Like, they're looking for who's having good springs, good training camps, who they should kind of rise up on. And like, what would you say to the few fantasy people that have started to go, oh, maybe I should be taking a flyer on Elijah Moore at the end of these drafts? Because I've seen a lot of people in that space writing about it.
I think it's a good idea. You could do a lot worse. I would caution against saying, oh my God, he's going to be a top 3 guy and he's going to get all these targets. I don't know. I don't know where, like, his ceiling is. But yes, I would say he's had a good spring. I would say that he's worth taking a flyer on if you're in fantasy, because he could very well be a guy who does see some footballs thrown his way and make some big plays. That's the thing that I've seen from him is, like, every time he catches the ball, it feels like it's a 15 to 20-yard gain. And I'm like, okay, like, he's finding a spot in the zone, and that's great. What I've been impressed with Elijah Moore is he's come in and just, bam, right away fit in. Like, there's been no adjustment period, it seems like, with Josh Allen. It seems to me like he's just come here and right away him and Josh have kind of found that chemistry, and that's what impresses me about him. He's a very, very fluid route runner. If you're going to talk about statistics and volume and fantasy football and all that, I just think it's hard to pigeonhole, because you just don't know with this group. You don't know who's going to get the targets. It's everybody eats, right? That's the mentality. But I do think that, like, right now, Elijah Moore would be on my 53, and that gets me to, okay, then where's Tyrell Shavers? Does he get on there? I don't know. You're right. I think it would take them either an injury or them keeping 6 for Tyrell Shavers to make the team, but he's, like, right there again like he was last year.
Sal Capaccio, what now for you, Sal, between now and training camp? You get some time?
Oh, I'll be hosting Extra Point Show still. So, I'll be around. I'll be hosting today. I have a little time off, though. Yeah, I don't want, not every day. I got a few days coming here or there, and then headed to Italy for 10 days right before training camp. Actually, that's the Italy trip we were promoting on WGR. That's happening actually in a few weeks, next month. And then right away, when I get back from Italy, like, training camp will start probably like 4 days after that, 3 days after that, I think it is. So it's kind of crazy when you think about that. But yeah, I'll be right. And then, hey, I'm here for you guys. You let me know. And there's always going to be league matters. There's always going to be things that are going on in the NFL or with the Buffalo Bills. You hope it's nothing that are storylines that are negative heading into training camp, obviously.
Very good.
Yeah, I don't know who's the league-wide guy anybody's. Remember when there was, like, way too much coverage about where Dalvin Cook was going to go, but it was mostly because there was nothing else to talk about? I don't even know who's this year's version of where's Dalvin Cook going to go?
Trey Hendrickson, TJ Watt,
yes.
Debo Samuel.
Okay.
No, sorry, not Debo Samuel.
I don't think. How about this?
Yeah.
I think it's this, Joe. Jeremy, you're right. I think Trey Hendrickson. I think it's the Bengals overall with him and Stewart.
He left minicamp.
Yeah, what is going on here,
Yeah, that's right. The Bengals and those two, for sure.
Thanks, Sal.
You got it, guys.